All right, so for this next piece, we already have our dude down here, our UFO, and we basically want to make it so the UFO can move around. We also have three different iterations of our meteor, and then we also have our photon. So yours should look something like mine. Doesn't have to look exactly, but you should have at least these elements that we've created here. So next thing we're going to be doing on step 60 through 68 is we're going to be making our character move around. So we need to select the UFO object, which I just did by clicking on it, click the movement tab and the property in the properties toolbar. So properties for the UFO are here. Remember, these each have a different thing, or these are all tabs that give you different types of properties. We're going to be looking at movement. Remember, static means it doesn't move at all. It stays still. So we're going to be choosing static and choose it to 8 directions. So change the type to 8 directions, which we just did. And then it says click the directions property to display the directions window. And then applying what we've learned, remove all directions except for direction 0 and direction 16. So we need to look for the directions, which is right here. And there's a lot of directions right here. And if you remember correctly, each of these have a number value. So this one was 0, this one is 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, and back to 0. What we want to do is remove all the directions except 0 and 16, which is this one and this one. So basically, we want to make it just go left and right. So click on all these to deselect them. So now we just have 0 and 16. Next, it says set the initial direction property to direction 0 and 16. So initial direction, we also want 0 and 16. So let's deselect each of those. So now we have both direction and initial direction, which is the beginning direction, both set to just 0 and 16. So we're set for both of those, which means it's just going to be going left and right. Set the speed property to 20. We're going to be setting the deceleration to 0 and acceleration to 20. Deceleration is kind of like when you come up to a stop sign and you put the brake on. And so basically it's going to decelerate or slow down to 0. And acceleration is when you step on the gas, and it's going to be going to 20. So deceleration, 0, acceleration, 20. And that'll give it a little bit more of a better feel when you're actually playing with it. So feel free to adjust these a little bit and keep them where they were and see the difference when you're running your frame. So now if we run our frame and I use the arrow keys on my keyboard, I can go left and right. And you'll notice it kind of keeps moving. Right, so it's a UFO, kind of like it is in space. All right, there we go. So deceleration, 0, acceleration, 20. So feel free to mess with those if you'd like, just to see what they do. But remember, deceleration is kind of like using brake pedal, acceleration is using the gas pedal. All right, and there we go. So that's run the frame. I'm going to go ahead and save it because I forgot to do that earlier. So now I have everything saved as is. Next is launching the photon because we don't want our bullet to just be floating around in space somewhere. We want it to actually be coming from our UFO. So we need to, photon will not be visible during gameplay until the player launches it. That's the goal. We need to use programming to control when the object is displayed. Otherwise, the computer doesn't know. It's just going to leave it there. So following the pseudocode will be used. This is what we're going to be developing. So if the player presses the spacebar, then it will launch a photon from the UFO object in an upward direction. That's what we're trying to build. So the way that we do that is drag the photon object near the outside of the frame. So it doesn't really matter where you drag it. I'm going to put mine over here on the left. And remember, the idea is inside this frame, this white space is what shows, and anything outside doesn't show up. So drag the photon outside the frame, and let me put it right close to what we were dealing with here, not inside. Okay. Display the event editor for the game frame. So make sure game frame is selected. Here's my event editor. Applying what you've learned, add a new condition for the spacebar is pressed. So we want a new condition, click on it, and we want the keyboard and mouse So we're dealing with the keyboard. So if the keyboard is pressed, specifically a specific key, so upon pressing a key, repeat key pressed, upon pressing any key, we don't want any key, we want a specific key. So upon pressing a specific key, so it says press a key, I'm going to press the space bar. You can't see it, but space bar. So upon pressing the space bar, let's keep going to the next screen. Right click on the cell below the icon for the UFO object. So upon pressing the space bar, the UFO, let me right click, will, I just lost my space. Oh, launch an object. I'm on right here. So 72, click launch an object and the shortcut menu. So launch an object. And then it will ask me which one. So this is where click on the speed of object, text box to enter 50. So before we select it, I guess. We'll come back there. Launch an object, select the photon object right there. Press OK. And then speed of object, we want 50. And then click the launch in selected directions radio button. So launch in selected directions. And then notice how all the different directions we could select. But right now, choose only the direction 8. So direction 8's right here. So notice how it's only selected. There's only one arrow up. And press the OK button. And OK again. All right, so now it says run the frame and see what happens. Choose frame. So there's my UFO. Press the space bar. I can shoot my photon any direction I want. There we go. All right, click the OK button and there it is. Run the frame, try pressing spacebar, and there it goes. Debug problems with UFO movement or photon launching if needed. So what I saw looked good, so I'm going to keep going. So that's 79. Now we're on 80. Display the event editor from the game frame. So once again, we're in the event editor. It's already open. And we're going to be doing movement wrap. And let me explain what that means. Right now, if I move my space guy out here, notice how he just kind of disappears. He goes on forever and ever and ever. What I'd like to happen is if he goes off the side, I want him to wrap over automatically to the other side. So it just kind of keeps going back and forth, back and forth. So that's what we're going to create here. So display the event editor did that. Applying what you've learned, add a new condition that tests the position of the UFO object to see if he leaves the frame on an area to the left or right. So new condition, here's the UFO object, and I'm looking for position. We want to test the position of UFO, of the UFO. And then we've done something like this before with Spyco, but let's keep going. So we want specifically left or right. I guess I should include that in here. Test the position of the UFO object to see if it leaves a game frame area on the left or the right. So this is, remember, leaving. This is entering. So let's deselect only the two that we want. So far I have leaving on the left or leaving on the right. Let me press OK. So if the UFO leaves the play area on the left or the right, then for the new condition, right-click on the cell below underneath the UFO object, and then click movement, wrap around play area. So movement, wrap around play area. What that means is if the UFO leaves the play area on the left or the right, it will wrap around the play area. All right, so now let's go ahead and run our frame and see if it actually works. So run frame. Once again, I can shoot my photon. Now I can move and it should move around to the other side. There it is, and test it to the left as well. All right, so now I've wrapped my object so it doesn't just disappear somewhere. And keep shooting, and there we go. All right, next, exploding the meteors. This one's going to be a couple more. We'll come all the way to 96, and then I'll create the next video for the next piece after that. So for the next piece, we're going to be exploding the meteor so we actually could do something. Display the game frame. So let's double click on the game frame, take a look. In the library toolbar, expand the tree local library games explosions and drag the explosion one object to the frame outside the visible area. So remember, library should be down here somewhere on the bottom. I'm not seeing it on mine. It might be kind of hidden somewhere behind properties. So I'm going to actually go to view. Whenever you can't find something, you just click on the word view and see if you can find it in here. The library is a toolbar, so I'm going to come over here to, oh, look at that, library window. It's unchecked, meaning it's not even visible. So I'm going to choose library. So here's my local library. I'm going to open it up and find, it told me right here, local library, games, explosions. So here's games. I'm going to click on the little plus sign. Remember, these are the branches, and then the leaves are when we actually open it up inside. So open up games, and I'm going to be looking for explosions, and I don't see explosions, so I'm going to have to look for it. So games, alpha, army, backgrounds, characters, chess, miscellaneous, other, planes, platforms, spacecraft, vehicles. All right, so I'm not seeing explosions anywhere in here. So I need to look around for explosion 1. So if I look in alpha, army, backgrounds, characters, let me see, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So it's not in there. Chess, not chess, miscellaneous. Here's explosions. So if I double click on explosions, so it was under miscellaneous. I'm going to choose this folder to go back so you can see. So miscellaneous, and it's underneath explosions. So if I open up explosions, there's all kinds of different ones. Explosion 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and so on and so forth. It says to move explosion 1 onto the game frame outside the visible area. So I'm going to take explosion 1 and move it out here somewhere. All right, explosion 1. Display the event editor for the game frame. So now let's come back over here to the game frame and choose the event editor. Create a new condition that matches the pseudocode. So if the photon object collides with the meteor, so new condition, if the photon object collides with another object, specifically the meteor, and it says the meteor large. So this is meteor large, medium, small. So I'm going to choose meteor large. So if there's a collision between the photon and the meteor large, then right-click on the cell below, create new objects icon. So remember, this is the create new objects icon. Then I want to create a new object, and specifically, I would like an explosion. So create new objects, select explosion 1 object, and press OK. So frame editor is displayed with an event location to create an object. So let's double check and make sure that looks correct. Oops, I need to choose this. Then it says, applying wave learn set the location at 0, 0 relative to the meteor large. So it's not going to put it at 0, 0. It'll create it at 0, 0 relative to the meteor that it was just shooting. So 0, 0, which means right on exactly where the meteor was. Then you press OK. So applying what you've learned, set the location, did that. Applying what you've learned, modify the event you just created to match the pseudocode. So if the photon object collides with meteor large, then create explosion 1 object at 0, 0 relative to meteor large object, which we did. And then we need to add these two things and destroy the meteor large object and destroy the photon. Otherwise, what happens is you continue to have the meteor even though it just exploded. So we don't want that to happen. So we need to destroy the meteor large. So where is it? Destroy, destroy, destroy. I know it's on here somewhere. Effect, nope. Order, movement, position, direction, animation, visibility. Oh, right down here. I just missed it. So far, if there's a collision between the photon and the meteor large, it will create the explosion and it will destroy the meteor large object. We also need to do the same with the photon. So now we have it that matches correctly. So if there's a collision between these two objects, creates a new explosion, destroys the large meteor, and destroys the photon. Display the game frame and apply what you learned. Copy and paste 3 of the large meteors at the top of the visible frame, so there's a total of 4. So let's come back over here, game frame. I'm going to copy this, so right-click, copy, right-click, paste, and select here, and paste here also. So now there should be a total of 4. Let's put one over here as well. All right, so now we have 4 large meteors, and we have our UFO, and so far it should work. Let's see if it does. That'll be on the next piece. Run the frame, test to see if the explosion occurs in the current location, which is the center of each large meteor. Choose the game window, close the game window when done testing. Let's see. So if I shoot one of the large ones, look at that. Nice explosion. I'm noticing that there's some of a little bit left over of the explosion, which is interesting. That's something where if I were creating this game, I probably would get rid of these, but I think what will happen is it will have some sort of a black background, so it won't really matter. But that's something where if I was building this game on your computer, I probably would add one more animation where there's nothing there. All right, debug any errors as needed. If the explosion does not occur in the center of the meteor, adjust the hotspot. And if you have that issue, just let me know. Okay, next we'll start moving on to cleaning up the animation, which is what will happen next, and then move from there.